For this week's edition of Archaeology Crime, we are going to the museum heist capital of the world. And based on our interview with Sam Hardy, I'm guessing that's going to be some violence-racked place marked by corruption and a weak rule of law. Well, actually, not so much. We're off to, Germany? In fact, we're going to the town of Manching in the southern region of Bavaria to the Celtic and Roman Museum there, where in 2022 an extremely valuable collection, both financially and historically, was stolen. Because wouldn't you know it, but Germany is actually a hotbed of museum heists, and the authorities there don't seem to be able to do anything to prevent them. In 2017, there was the theft of this enormous Canadian gold coin featuring the late Queen Elizabeth II. Now, this thing was next level ginormous. Made of pure 24-karat gold and dubbed the Big Maple Leaf. This thing weighed 100 kilos, or about 220 pounds, and it was worth a reported $4 million. $4 million? Now, there must be some reasonable explanation for why Canada would make a solid gold coin weighing more than the average adult man and put it in Germany, but I have not found it yet. But security on this one must have been a wee bit lax, as the heist involved 3 men in their 20s, a wheelbarrow, and a skateboard. So we're not exactly talking Mission Impossible here. The suspects, all with ties to the Remo crime family, were apprehended, but that coin was never found, likely melted down and sold for scrap by the thieves. Then in December 2019, Dresden's Green Vault, loaded with old royal treasure and thought to be the most valuable museum collection in the world, was broken into. The thieves made off with loot estimated to be worth as much as $1 billion. 31 of the stolen items were found 3 years later, along with 6 suspects who were arrested, tried, and convicted, again all with links to the Remo crime family. Now, an important fact to note here is one of the ways the thieves got away is by destroying and disabling a nearby utilities box that actually shut down the museum's alarm system, but filed that away for later. And just days after the Green Vault was hit, the Stasi Museum in Berlin, which was all about the former East Germany's feared secret police, that was robbed also. The takings in this case are relatively modest, comprising just a few medals like these you see here, worth a few thousand euros. However, you get the idea. Even though this stuff isn't necessarily archaeological, the track record at museums in Germany is not great, with heists at some of the country's premier institutions. But it was only a matter of time, and in late 2022, a group of professional burglars committed a huge crime against archaeology, targeting our little Celtic and Roman museum in Manching. The museum's main attraction was a hoard of Celtic gold coins found beneath an ancient building in 1999, and this is thought to be the largest cache of Celtic gold found in the entire 20th century. Now think about how rare this is. These coins were from the 1st century BC, and they were made of gold, which is soft, easy to melt down, and a universal store of value. Therefore, it rarely survives in its original form. And moreover, the Celts were not exactly a highly moneyed society, so their coins are much more rare than the earlier Roman or later medieval ones. All in all, 483 coins, plus the giant so-called cast pie from which the coins were struck, were stolen. All of this weighed 3.7 kilos or 8 pounds, about the weight of a large watermelon, so that is a lot of moolah. In fact, the estimated market value of the gold at that time was $100 billion. Well, not that much, but something like $1.8 million. Alright, so back to our heist. Early in the morning of Tuesday, November 22nd, 2022, at 1:17 a.m., all of Manching, a town of 13,000 people, suddenly goes dark. Electricity and internet are cut. The phone lines are down, effectively cutting the town off from the outside world.
You're gonna stop right there.
Though honestly, being fast asleep, most residents wouldn't have realized it. But anyway, the museum's security system is disabled, and by 1:26 a.m., 7 minutes later, somebody is breaking through the glass on an emergency exit. And just 7 minutes later, at 1:33 a.m., a group of thieves is getting through the thick bulletproof glass protecting the Hoard. But unlike in that movie, there are no good Muppets to the rescue in this case. The thieves simply disappear off into the night, and the museum staff comes in the next morning and discovers the theft. The police are called, and investigators from the Bavarian State Criminal Police Office thoroughly search the area, turning up the tools of the trade: 2 crowbars, a pair of pruning shears, wire cutters, and a radio antenna. However, today we have made great strides in one tool that can catch all but the most wily criminals: DNA. And that's just what the cops found on the tools that were left behind by the criminals. So they checked these DNA samples against international databases and associated them with a string of similar crimes in Germany and Austria going back to 2014. They had a high-tech international criminal gang on their hands. So over the next 8 months, authorities went gangbusters all over Germany, searching 28 residences, businesses, garden plots, a boathouse, vehicles, and they turned up a lot of evidence, including burglary equipment. And before long, the law caught up with these criminals. First, they tracked down a 42-year-old man in Schwerin, northern Germany, based on DNA left behind on the scene of a robbery from 2018.
See, like the Mantis, we always get our man.
Mrs. Peacock was a man?
From there, he spilled the beans on another 46-year-old guy who further implicated 2 other middle-aged guys, one in Schwerin and one in Berlin. And there you go. 4 suspects in custody. Case closed, right?
Wrong!
Because we're forgetting the most important part. What happened to those coins? And here's where the real tragedy begins.
Where's the gold? Where's the gold, my man?
Initially hopeful about recovering the treasure, the investigators arrested that suspect in Berlin with 18 lumps of gold, each equivalent to approximately 4 of those coins, which would actually mean that over 400 of them were still missing. And just to make sure, archaeometallurgists assessed the composition of the gold nuggets using XRF, which we discussed in an earlier episode, and they found the composition of gold, silver, and copper to match that of the Hoard exactly. So while investigators were still optimistic, interpreting this as the fact that there were 400 coins still possibly out there, I'm really not very hopeful. Those coins would have been highly distinctive and would have attracted a lot of attention. There's no way these thieves would have sold them as is, and they likely melted them down just as the gold nuggets they were found with. So it's really unlikely they would have been stupid enough to hold on to the original coins, which would have tied them directly to the theft. My strong suspicion is they melted them all down. As an aside, the total estimated market value of that 3.7 kilos or 8 pounds of gold would have been about $280,000. But compare that to the total estimated price tag on the Hoard in its original form of $1.8 million. A huge difference. And it turned out at least one of the thieves definitely knew what he was doing. He was a telecommunications technician, and among his things they found radio jamming equipment, which would have been able to disable the museum's alarm system. But here's the deal. This was a gang of highly professional burglars who had hit other high-value targets and very likely had ties to organized crime like the Remo family. And we know these guys are highly unlikely to cooperate with investigators, knowing full well the repercussions if they were to do that.
Big boy, we're friends. Big boy, not the best. Not the best, my friend.
I know.
And so, not surprisingly, since the arrests, no new information has come out, at least not that's been made public. But it isn't for lack of trying. There is a 20-member special investigations unit looking into the crime, and this is nicknamed Oppidum, which is the Roman name for Celtic fortified settlements, which is exactly what Manching was at the time these coins were deposited. But though I can always have hope, given the passage of time, I'm not optimistic these things are ever going to be found.
Talking about the significance of the passage of time, right? The significance of the passage of time.
Now, what can we learn from this? Well, unlike that big maple leaf, which was taken by a bunch of youths on skateboards and with a wheelbarrow, the Celtic coin hoard was stolen by a bunch of professional burglars in a very sophisticated heist. After all, they were able to cut the power to an entire town. And in the face of that, what are chronically underfunded museums to do? Unfortunately, they can't do a whole lot without more money. However, although it may be tempting to say we should consolidate everything into these really, premier, well-funded museums, there's a lot of trouble with that also. First, those national museums are huge, and it's really hard to keep track of their entire collections. I'm looking at you, British Museum. And if you recall from my site visit to ancient Mycenae, when things are consolidated in the national museums, the localities lose out on their own cultural heritage as well as valuable tourist dollars. Plus, to the visitor, these artifacts lose some of their meaning and power if taken out of the context in which they were used and found, so they really do become less interesting that way. So we want archaeology and heritage to stay out in the communities where they belong, but we have to do that safely and securely. And it's going to require a lot of funds to fortify these places, or at least to hire a frickin' night guard.
I'd like you to meet my two colleagues here. Reginald, Gus!
Where is he?
Because even since that major theft at Manching less than 4 years ago, there have been plenty of others, and in fact this is just going to continue until we make it a priority to protect our heritage. So do your part, spread the word, and do support your local museums and cultural heritage. Hey, if you like what you heard, give me that thumbs up below, hit that bell to subscribe, or if you want to support more independent archaeology content, consider contributing to my Patreon, where you can enjoy some exclusive members-only benefits and other goodies. Until the next dig.